When we say America is 250 years old, we're not talking about the year when the first colonists arrived. We're not talking about the year when we built the first American city. 250 years ago is when America declared independence. 250 years ago is when America moved from being an outpost of another country, just an economic appendage, to living out its conscience and giving the idea of freedom a physical location and a name. I'm not going to talk about whether we've always lived up to the ideals our founders expressed. Nothing is perfect, and all countries exist within the context of history. Every country is run by human beings, and those human beings are of their time. But America has always been exceptional, and every time has had exceptional people working toward those ideals, sometimes working very hard. These people brought us our past, our present, and our future, if we can keep it. For our 250th, our bicentennial, Trump has been kind enough to take us on a tour of all these different eras of history. He's allowing us to relive the whole 250 years, from Watergate to smallpox. On Monday, one of the president's associates described America as naive. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. He described it as the Shire. But 250 years of not just surviving as a nation, but dominating the world does not produce naivete. In 250 years, America has learned a few things. The first thing we learned is that we don't like unilaterally imposed tariffs. Americans haven't forgotten that. They don't like taxes being thrown at them on a whim by an executive. That dislike is traditional here. It's called cultural memory, or Western American values. It is literally the defining feature of America. It's the reason we founded a country. That's the lesson. It's a lesson we learned and a lesson we taught. Fortunately, we don't need to fight a war over these tariffs, as the court system is handling it. In 250 years, our lessons have accumulated into a set of mechanisms to prevent problems we've encountered before. No kings isn't a protest slogan, it's a statement of fact. If someone were to try and naively rule like a king here and impose a tax without going through the proper channels, they might end up owing billions of dollars in refunds. We've come a long way from dumping things in the harbor. In fact, don't spontaneously tax imports is rule number 1 in America. How do we explain that these tariffs happened at all? One reason they were handled so haphazardly, is that Trump and his administration go out of their way to upset people for its own sake. They do some of the things they do because it amuses them to try and trigger people, or to see them upset about anything at all. Sometimes the content of their actions or speech is secondary to the reaction they expect to get from onlookers. Trump's administration now owes billions and is being sued by dozens of companies. He upended our trade agreements multiple times and wasted all these resources. Part of the reason is that he wanted to upset people and seem cavalier. It's a young and inexperienced idea of toughness. Over the centuries, America has learned the value, including the monetary value, of doing things right the first time instead of prioritizing upsetting people. Another example is his remodeling. The White House hasn't been in this condition since 1814 when it was burned down by Canada, and he has the temerity to invite the American hockey team to his speech after they so bravely defended us. He tries to return to the economics and perceived swagger of the 1800s because he sees it criticized as a crueler time. He talks about not being forced to apologize, and some of that manifests as nostalgia. But, as we saw at the Super Bowl halftime show, he also doesn't want to live in the world that time and those men created. The men he's pretending to admire and the political conditions he says he's trying to recreate are the reason that Puerto Rico is part of the United States. Yet, it gives him panic attacks. He wants to own Venezuela and never see a Venezuelan. Speaking of deportation, I'm going to get back to that Shire statement I mentioned earlier. On Monday, Elon Musk tweeted that America has been made naive by safety, that we're the Shire, and that if we don't deport the orcs, that all the hobbits would get raped to death. He said that America doesn't believe evil really exists. America was never Munchkinland. We know evil exists, and most of us don't have to read a fantasy book to understand it. America saw true evil during the Civil War. a war like Elon calls for every day in a dozen countries. We're not strangers to evil, and we're not strangers to people like him. L. Ron Hubbard, Soapy Smith. America has a rich history of conmen, scammers, and people who tell you they can build a flying car. We're all familiar with the concept of agitating both sides of a war in order to try and make money. We can all see this happening. He does it in front of everybody. Elon is evil because he's sheltered. He doesn't even get to enjoy a pleasant garden. Evil is a word that came up a lot yesterday in reference to Candace Owens. While Gilded Age barons built monuments or public works, what Elon spends his money on is delegation. He delegates lying to a set of thousands of people, real and artificial, on both political sides by means of a payment system. The numbers are higher than you'd expect. Elon paid one man almost $20,000 in 1 month just to steal videos from TikTok and repost them on Twitter. There's no telling how much Candace Owens gets paid by Elon himself to spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and lie about Erica Kirk. He pays agitators on the left and right. The Antifa terrorists with blue checks are paid with the same money that pays Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. He pays in a way that incentivizes people to lie outrageously. The whole political movement embraces lying as a tactic in a way that distinguishes them from other political movements, even conservative political movements or extreme left political movements. It's strange because when you lie, it means that you don't have a real problem to bring up. By definition, they're lying about innocent people in mundane situations, otherwise they wouldn't need to lie. If a political movement values efficiency, they avoid lying because they have enough real problems to deal with. It just saves time not to make things up. A movement that makes things up in order to outrage people, and that does it from both political sides, and is paid by a guy who verbally calls for a civil war every single day, is not trying to introduce efficiency into the system. I personally would have second thoughts about using the Department of Defense to underwrite the same man's child pornography simulator robot, let alone about giving him a monopoly on those contracts. But then again, maybe it's a matter of taste. During the Cold War, we fought communism at home and abroad with a combination of information controls. We censored works by Americans, but facilitated radio broadcasts and shipment of contraband into Russia. We did this in order to undermine the social cohesion of a military enemy while using paranoiac force to try and maintain our own. Today, we see those methods being used almost identically, only they're being turned against NATO. Disinformation researchers and even fact-checkers have been banned from entering the US. Our State Department has initiated the creation of a portal that would allow the far right in Europe to access banned Nazi materials. It is a walk backwards through history. There were some great men working at that time, back in the 50s and 60s, who didn't just fight against Russia. They fought against the mob. Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was one of them. He fought for justice so relentlessly that sometimes even people on his own side were afraid of him. He achieved his goals, and the mob has still never recovered. It never will. He was a fighter, and he didn't need to repeat it all day. Everybody knew it. Nobody would mistake him for somebody who put up with too much, so he didn't need to flex or pose or use hatred as a proxy for toughness to convince anyone that he wasn't soft. Being naturally tough freed him up to defend other people. After Martin Luther King was assassinated, he spoke about the need to see each other as human and to act with humanity. He was a patriot, and he knew what evil was. He knew how to meet it and end it with the law. America taught him, and it learned from him. Those lessons cannot be unlearned, and they are what make America great.